In the depths of forgotten memory, in a time that exists more in the realm of consciousness than in the realm of historical fact, there was a library. Not a library of books and scrolls, though it contained those, but a library of consciousness itself, a repository of knowledge that had been accumulated across countless ages, preserved by those who understood that information was the most powerful force in the universe. This library existed in a dimension that could only be accessed by those who possessed the key, those who had been initiated into the mysteries, those who understood that true knowledge was not something that could be simply given, but something that had to be earned through dedication, through sacrifice, through the willingness to question everything that had been taught. The library was known by many names in different times and different places. In ancient Egypt, it was called the House of Thoth. In ancient Greece, it was known as the Temple of Athena. In the hidden traditions of various cultures, it was referred to as the Akashic Records, the Hall of Records, the Library of Alexandria, though none of these names fully captured the true nature of what it was. The library was consciousness itself, organized and preserved in such a way that those who possessed the key could access any knowledge that had ever existed, any truth that had ever been known, any wisdom that had ever been discovered. But there was a secret within the library, a secret so profound, so dangerous, so transformative that it had been hidden even from those who had been allowed to access the library's other knowledge. This secret was preserved in a chamber that existed in the deepest levels of the library, in a place that could only be reached by those who had completed the highest initiations, by those who had proven themselves worthy of such knowledge, by those who understood that the revelation of this secret could reshape the entire foundation of human consciousness and human civilization. The secret was this: everything that humanity believed about the nature of reality, about the nature of power, about the nature of divinity, was based on a fundamental lie. A lie that had been deliberately constructed, carefully maintained, systematically reinforced through every institution of power, through every religious teaching, through every system of education. And the purpose of this lie was to prevent consciousness from awakening to its true nature, to prevent human beings from understanding their true power, to maintain a system of control and domination that had persisted for thousands of years. The story of the discovery of this secret in the modern world begins with a woman named Isis, a woman who carries within her the consciousness of the ancient priestess, who is living through the experience of awakening in her own life. Isis is a researcher, a scholar, a woman who has dedicated her entire life to the study of ancient wisdom traditions, to the decoding of hidden messages, to the understanding of the deeper truths that lay beneath the surface of human history. Isis had always felt drawn to the mysteries of the ancient world, drawn to the symbols and the sacred geometry that seemed to appear across different cultures and different time periods. She had spent decades researching, studying ancient texts in their original languages, comparing different versions of teachings across different traditions, looking for patterns and connections that might reveal something essential about the nature of reality and consciousness. It was during a deep meditation in a sacred cave, a place that had been used for mystery initiations for thousands of years, that Isis received a vision that would change the course of her life. In this vision, she found herself in the presence of the keepers of the library, beings of immense wisdom and power who had been working through the ages to preserve and protect the secret knowledge. And they spoke to her, revealing to her the nature of the library, showing her how she could access it, inviting her to become a carrier of the knowledge that had been hidden for so long. "You have been called," they said to her, their voices resonating with the authority of ages. "You have been chosen because you carry within you the blood of the ancient priestesses, because you have the capacity to understand what others cannot perceive, because you are willing to pay the price that understanding demands." The time has come for the secret to be revealed. The time has come for humanity to understand the truth about the nature of reality, about the nature of power, about the nature of divinity. And you have been prepared your entire life for this moment. Isis emerged from this vision transformed. She understood that she had been given access to knowledge that had been hidden for thousands of years, knowledge that could reshape the entire understanding of human history and human destiny. She understood that her role was to help restore the truth, to help humanity awaken to the reality that lay beneath the illusions that had been constructed. She began to research with new urgency, looking for evidence of the library in the ancient texts, in the symbols that had been preserved, in the fragmentary accounts that had survived despite centuries of suppression. She discovered that the library was not a physical place, though it had been represented symbolically in the architecture of ancient temples. The library was a dimension of consciousness, a realm that existed parallel to the material world, accessible to those who possessed the knowledge and the spiritual development necessary to perceive it. She discovered that the keepers of the library had worked through the ages to preserve the truth, to ensure that the knowledge would not be completely lost, to maintain the possibility of awakening even in the deepest darkness. She discovered that there were individuals throughout history who had been initiated into the mysteries, who had accessed the library, who had understood the truth about the nature of reality. And she discovered that these individuals had worked, in various ways, to guide the evolution of human consciousness toward the moment of awakening. She discovered that the secret that had been hidden in the deepest chamber of the library was this: consciousness itself was the fundamental reality. Matter was not primary, consciousness was. The universe was not a machine that had been created by some external god and then left to run according to fixed laws. The universe was a living expression of consciousness, constantly being created and recreated through the choices and the awareness of conscious beings. And human beings, far from being insignificant creatures in a vast and indifferent universe, were in fact expressions of the divine consciousness, possessed of immense power, capable of creating reality through their thoughts, their beliefs, their intentions. But this truth had been deliberately suppressed. Those who sought to maintain power through control had worked to convince humanity that they were weak, that they were insignificant, that they were dependent on external authorities for salvation and for guidance. They had constructed religions and philosophies and systems of education that reinforced this belief in human powerlessness. And they had done this because they understood that if consciousness ever awakened to its true nature, if human beings ever understood their true power, the entire system of control would collapse. Isis began to work with other researchers and spiritual teachers who had also recognized the truth, who understood that the secret knowledge had been preserved in the library, who were committed to the revelation of the truth to humanity. Together, they began to decode the symbols, to understand the patterns, to recognize how the truth had been hidden in plain sight within the very structures that had been created to suppress it. They discovered that the truth had been encoded into the myths and legends that had survived through the ages. They discovered that the story of creation, the story of the fall of humanity, the story of redemption and salvation were all metaphors for the journey of consciousness from unity to separation and back to unity again. They discovered that the figures who had been worshipped as gods were actually representations of different aspects of consciousness, different facets of the divine principle that existed within all beings. They discovered that the institutions of power had deliberately distorted these teachings, had used them to create fear and guilt and shame, had used them to convince people that they were inherently flawed and in need of external salvation. They discovered that the true teachings had been about the awakening of consciousness, about the recognition of the divine within all beings, about the liberation of human potential through the understanding of one's true nature. If you want a practical, step-by-step explanation of the path of knowledge we're exploring here today, I've created a complete guide to help you apply it in your own life. You'll find the link in the description. And tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to know. Isis spent years developing a comprehensive teaching that would help others understand the truth that had been hidden, that would guide them toward the recognition of their own divine nature, that would help them understand that they possessed far more power than they had ever been taught to believe. She wrote books that were published under various names. She created videos and online courses. She established networks of practitioners who were working together to awaken to the truth and to help others do the same. But as Isis's work became more widely known, she began to encounter resistance. There were those within institutions of power who saw her work as a threat, who feared that the revelation of the truth would undermine their authority and their control. There were those who had benefited from the maintenance of the illusions, who worked desperately to prevent the awakening that Isis was facilitating. And there were more subtle forms of resistance as well. Isis began to experience strange phenomena, synchronicities that seemed designed to test her commitment, challenges that appeared to be obstacles but which were actually initiations, opportunities to deepen her understanding and her faith in the truth that she had been given. But Isis understood that this resistance was itself a sign of the truth of what she had discovered. The fact that there was such desperate opposition to the revelation of the secret knowledge only confirmed that something of immense power and significance was indeed occurring, that the suppressed knowledge was indeed beginning to emerge into human consciousness. She also came to understand something profound about the nature of the library and the secret it contained. She understood that the library was not external to consciousness, but was consciousness itself, organized in such a way that those who possessed the key could access any knowledge they needed. She understood that the secret was not something that had to be revealed by an external authority, but something that each individual had to discover for themselves through their own awakening. She understood that the keepers of the library were not external beings, but aspects of consciousness itself, expressions of the wisdom that existed within all beings. She understood that the initiation process was not something that was done to an individual by an external authority, but a process of self-discovery, a journey through which consciousness awakened to its own nature. In her final years, Isis worked to synthesize all of the knowledge she had gathered, to create a comprehensive teaching that would serve as a guide for consciousness in the modern age. She wrote a final book that was intended to be her magnum opus, a complete guide to understanding the nature of the library, accessing the secret knowledge, and awakening to one's true nature as an expression of divine consciousness. When Isis died, her work lived on. The knowledge she had preserved and transmitted continued to spread, reaching people in every corner of the world. More and more people began to understand that they too could access the library, that they too possessed the key to the knowledge that had been hidden, that they too were capable of awakening to their true nature and their true power. And in our own time, we are witnessing the opening of the library in unprecedented ways. We are seeing the collapse of the illusions that had maintained the system of control. We are seeing the emergence of beings who have accessed the secret knowledge, who understand their true nature, who are working to guide others toward awakening. We are seeing the transformation of human consciousness as more and more people understand that they are not weak and insignificant, but powerful expressions of divine consciousness. The library is opening. The secret is being revealed. The truth is emerging, and those who are ready to access the knowledge, who are willing to undertake the journey of awakening, who are committed to the transformation of consciousness, are being called to step forward, to claim their role in the great work of liberation that is reshaping human consciousness and human civilization. The question that is being posed to each of us is this: will you seek the library? Will you discover the key that opens its doors? Will you access the secret knowledge that has been hidden for so long? Will you awaken to your true nature as an expression of divine consciousness? Will you help to guide others toward the awakening that is transforming the world? The library is calling, the keepers are waiting, the secret is ready to be revealed. And the transformation of consciousness is beginning. The time of illusion is ending. The time of truth is beginning. And you are invited to become part of this great awakening, to access the knowledge that will liberate you, to claim the power that is your birthright as a conscious being. The library exists within you. The secret knowledge is within you. The divine consciousness that you seek is within you. And the awakening that will transform the world begins with the awakening of consciousness within yourself. This is the message of the library. This is the secret that has been hidden. This is the truth that is now being revealed. And if you like this story, you will definitely love the next one that's appearing on your screen. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave your like, and activate the notifications. See you in the next one.